In today's video, we have a ton of NHL news and rumors to discuss. We have the latest trade talks surrounding teams like the Habs, the Leafs, the Sharks, the Coyotes, and a whole lot more. Plus, we have some big signings, including Tomas Hertl in San Jose, news from the waiver wire, injury updates, and more. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a ton of NHL news and rumors to discuss today. It's been an incredibly busy news cycle. Of course, we saw a trade earlier today happen between the Florida Panthers and the New York Rangers, sending Frank Vatrano from Florida to New York for a 4th round draft pick. That's 3 consecutive days now that we've had a trade leading up into the NHL trade deadline, and I would suspect that it's only going to continue to get busier as we inch ourselves closer. Now, on the waiver news, we have Mark Jankowski from Buffalo, was on waivers yesterday. He cleared, so nobody put in a claim for him, so he can be reassigned to the Sabres minor league affiliate. And we have 2 new players on waivers today. Wouldn't be shocking if we saw a claim, because we do have a pretty decent young player in Tyler Benson from the Oilers, who's been looking for a more and bigger opportunity. Doesn't seem to get it consistently with Edmonton, but in his limited opportunity, hasn't really produced a lot, but I still think there's a lot of potential there. So he's on waivers. And we also have the veteran Matthew Perreault from the Montreal Canadiens, who's on a short-term contract under $1 million, has a fair bit of experience. Teams looking for bottom 6 help ahead of the playoffs. Maybe they pick up a waiver claim instead of spending assets to make a trade. It is a possibility. It wouldn't be shocking if either player was possibly picked up in the right scenario. But at the same time, it wouldn't be shocking too if either player cleared and was able to be reassigned as well. I think we could probably go either way. Now, we have a bunch of signings to discuss here. Many of these are fairly minor deals, except for the big one in San Jose. The Washington Capitals have re-signed Joe Snively to a 2-year extension at $800,000 per season. Of course, the undrafted forwards in his mid-20s, a little bit of a late bloomer, fair to say, but also the first local kid to play in the Capitals organization as well. So that's great to see hockey building up in all these different, American markets especially. We're seeing more and more of that. So Snively's been a decent fit there. So it's a good contract for him to get a little bit of job security, and it'll help the Capitals out with salary cap being under $1 million. So that's pretty good. The Detroit Red Wings have signed 2020 second round pick left winger Cross Hanas. So he gets his ELC. And we also have another signing as well. The Boston Bruins have signed college free agent center iceman from BC Boston College, Mark McLaughlin. So of course he's a pretty interesting prospect. Obviously a local product, played in the college scene in the Boston area, so the Bruins have likely had a chance to see him quite a bit. And the Blackhawks have also signed a college player as one of their own draft picks. So that's Alex Vlasic, defenseman from the 2019 draft, taken in the second round. He's got a lot of size, 6'6", played at Boston University, more of a defensive style defenseman. Not going to get a ton of offense out of him, but he's got lots of size, good defensively. Another interesting prospect to add to the Blackhawks mix. And like I said, we have the big news out of San Jose. I don't know if the Sharks have officially announced this yet, so we don't have all the fine details, but it's been reported by a number of credible, reliable sources like Pierre LeBrun and Chris Johnson. All the NHL insiders are talking about it on Twitter, that Tomas Hertl is staying in San Jose, and it looks like it's going to be an 8-year contract at $8 million a season, so around $64 million. That may not be the exact total by the time this is posted to YouTube. Those numbers should be a little bit more complete, I would think. I don't know about no trade clause, no move clause. There's probably something like that in there for a fairly elite player, but to what extent we don't know. But right now it looks like he's coming off the trade market, going into the long-term contract to remain in San Jose. We had heard reports that they were very interested in keeping him. He's having an excellent season, great player there, but certainly the Sharks do have a lot of long-term deals, again, for a team that's been under the playoffs now for a while. As much as Hertl's good, and this is certainly a good contract, I have no problem with it at all. But the Sharks, in my opinion, really do need, I think, a rebuild. But they have Brent Burns, they have Erik Karlsson, they have Logan Couture or Timo Myers coming up. I mean, he needs a new deal, but they have a lot of bigger contracts. So Hertl's a great player. We'll see what they can do. I think San Jose appears to be convinced that they can kind of retool here on the fly and don't really need a full rebuild, but we'll see. They started off good. A lot of the California teams did, but they kind of fizzled out. Obviously, they've had better goaltending this year from James Reimer. We'll see what the Sharks do ahead of the deadline. We might see some other moves out of that team, though. But with Hertl being one of the big names coming off, I know teams like the Rangers, the Bruins, a few others that were kind of lurking around interested in this player. Fans of those teams are probably a little bit saddened to hear the news that he's staying, but certainly that's a big piece of business there for the San Jose Sharks to have taken care of, so they can know that he's staying in the organization. Now on to the trade talk, and we have lots of it. We know that, like I said, we've had 3 deals in 3 days. It's just starting to pick up. Teams are starting to finally get some deals done here. Let's start with Chicago. They have a numerous amount of players that are involved in trade discussions. Obviously, Fleury. We've heard Ryan Carpenter, Calvin DeHaan. But the information we have today is on Dominic Kubalik, who appears to be pretty close to being traded. Right now, they're saying that the Oilers and the Ducks are the finalists to land this guy. Former 30-goal scorer. Obviously, he's had his fair share of struggles, I think, up and down since that season. But he's a good player. I think he has a lot of potential. He's shown it in the past. He's still relatively young. The contract's not too crazy, so certainly attainable for some of these other teams to pick him up, especially if the Hawks will retain salary. We'll see where things go on that front. I don't know what the deals or details are going to be. Obviously, the Ducks have a lot of younger players that would be interesting to Chicago, so I can see where there would be a fit there. When it comes to the Oilers, I don't know. I mean, maybe Tyler Benson, who just cleared waivers, could be a player that the Hawks would want included. Maybe they want to wait and see if he cleared waivers first, and then if so, maybe he could be included. He could go to the minors for right now, but could be a player for the future who they could call up either later this year or next year. That's an option for them. The Oilers do have some other prospects too that they could consider, and Kubalik would certainly add them some more depth on the wings, but we'll see where that goes. But right now, the latest reports are that he's close to being traded, and those are the 2 teams that are most likely in the mix there. And now we're staying with the Oilers. There are some news on injuries. Looks as though Mike Smith is making a return. He's going to be in goal for the Oilers here in the next game. And Jesse Puljujarvi is also going to be back from injury as well. He's been out for some time. So it'll be interesting to see where things go, especially in the front of Mike Smith. Koskinen has played a lot lately. Had his ups and downs. For the most part, was decent, but then had a few rough games lately. So, it'll be really interesting to see how they handle this. So, the Oilers and the Leafs goaltending situation has been pretty fascinating for the last couple of months, watching the team kind of have its moments, be really good, and it struggles, and you got to wonder what they're going to do, but they're kind of limited on what they can do at the same time. And obviously, Mike Smith playing at a high level would be great for them, but it's been something he struggled with for the entire season. So, we'll see where that goes. Now, when it comes to the Maple Leafs, we're hearing different reports between Chris Johnson and Darren Dreger talking about the fact that the Leafs might not do a lot, or at least what they do might not be overly significant. Now, Johnston was saying that he feels the Leafs would like to upgrade at all positions, so a goalie, a D, and a forward, if they were able to. That's going to prove difficult, but certainly, they'd like some insurance in goal, some help on the blue line, and then a forward. Now, there was looking like Jake Muzzin was going to be set to maybe return before the end of the regular season. He's been skating a bit on his own, which has been picked up by the media, but then he was a full participant at practice today. But then after practice, Sheldon Keefe said that he's likely going to be taking a step back. So I don't think things were progressing as well as they were hoping for. So that to me could be a sign that maybe Jake Muzzin gets shut down. To me, he had 2 concussions really close together. For his own well-being and for the sake of the team, I honestly think it's wise to shut him down for the rest of the season, and I don't think anybody would have any issues with him going on long-term injury reserve, because this is a legit injury. If he can play in the playoffs, great, but certainly he has to look after himself. And it can be putting his team in a bad spot if he rushes back too quickly. At the same time, the team should want him to look after himself too, which I'm sure they do. So at the same time, they have more flexibility if Muzzin doesn't come back, but it was looking like he was going to come back. But I mean, with this kind of being a concussion and too close together, it's impossible to put a timeline on the return. They were aiming for about 4 weeks is what they said, but that's really just somebody's best guess. That's all that is. Right, so we'll see where that goes. I know on the blue line, they've been linked to Mark Giordano being their top target. Hampus Lindholm's name has been mentioned as well. Giordano, of course, could be reunited with his former longtime D partner from the Flames and TJ Brody. that could be something that they look to do. Giordano is definitely going to be traded. The Kraken are holding him out of the lineup for tonight's game, so that's certainly a confirmation that they're heavily involved in trade talks around this player. They want to protect the asset, so certainly he is going to be dealt, and likely his time as captain with the Kraken organization appears to be coming to a close here. When it comes to goaltenders, Darren Dreger was saying that the Leafs, as much as they would want to consider this, that it's probably not going to be a big splash if they do anything. He said that last year when they brought in David Riddick, that it probably would be something comparable to that, something that's not a big salary, something that's relatively cheap for an acquisition, just as an insurance piece. If Campbell can't come back and find his game, and if Mrazek continues to struggle, they have that. Of course, they have the youngster Shalgren in there, who got a shutout in his first game, but he's only played one game, and you don't want to put too much on this kid too soon. Obviously, if he can play and play good, but you probably want that in a limited role for the time being. We don't have any kind of indication this is going to be Jordan Binnington 2.0. It's a little late in the season to really have a lot of runway to build up to that. I don't know, but I know when it comes to goalie help, though, we talk a lot about Fleury, and the Leafs should be calling about Fleury. Maybe they should, but there's no guarantee he'll even want to go there for starters. Big acquisition cost, might need a third party to eat the salary. It's going to very complicated, not be easy to do. But another name that you could look to that would be that insurance piece like David Riddick, who's actually played really well, and a goalie they're quite familiar with is Craig Anderson in Buffalo. He had a hot start to the season and got hurt. There was some question how long if he'd even be able to come back, but he did. He sounds like he's still having a lot of fun. He's a great leader. Obviously loves the game, bit of a lifer, getting up there in age, but still loves the competition and loves to play, and in doing well and on a not so great team. So certainly that acquisition cost would be pretty cheap. I mean, he's making league minimum. If they could give up like a mid-round pick or something, third or fourth rounder, to bring in Craig Anderson, to me that might make just as much sense as a lot of the other options out where you're not overpaying. And then at least you have another guy with experience who could be a good teammate and jump in there as necessary. I know I was listening to Mike McKenna, who was a former NHL, AHL, longtime pro goalie, talking about this on Sportsnet Radio with Justin Bourne and Nick Kyprios today, and he doesn't have a lot of confidence in Peter Mrazek, and went on to explain why, and he's really concerned about the Leafs goaltending situation. And to me, with Campbell having such a bad stretch here for the last 2 months, you almost think they need to work in another guy here. And it's like, if it has to be somebody cheap, Anderson could certainly answer a lot of those questions. But on the blue line, I think is going to be their top focus. I think Giordano is going to be a possibility. Jacob Middleton in San Jose is getting a lot of attention from teams like Toronto as well because of the cheap price tag that comes with his salary cap hit. Again, only making like $725 or $750 that he's earning. Playing alongside Burns and Carlson at times this year. Not going to be doing anything flashy, but he does a lot of the little things right. Good stay-at-home type of defenseman. Obviously, he can help balance out those other guys. So he's also a guy that apparently is in the mix too. Some people think that the Leafs need to try to add maybe 2 defensemen, and that Travis Dermott is going to be traded out. Justin Hall is a possibility, but if they want to do much more than that, then it could have to involve another player off the roster, and that's difficult who that could be. Either you get somebody to take Mrazek's contract, which won't be easy, or you're looking at dipping into the forward group, and then who's it going to be? You're going to trade, is it going to be Kerfoot? Is it going to be Engvall? Is it going to be Mikheyev? I don't know. It's not going to be anybody too substantial, but they're all players that have been relatively important for them too. So I don't know what they would do in that regard. So it's hard to say how busy Dubas is going to be. And even if he is busy, a lot of the moves he's making might involve players that are pretty low salary, but hopefully with a big impact. Now, when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens, of course, Ben Chiarot's still right at the top of the order here for players that are going to be dealt. He will be held out of the lineup, of course, until the trade comes to be. We talked yesterday about teams like the Panthers and the Blues and the Bruins, and to a small degree the Maple Leafs and a few other teams that are in the mix there on Chiarot. But Artturi Lehkonen is another player getting a lot of attention. Many feel he could be this year's version of like a Barclay Goodrow or Blake Coleman. Teams like Tampa, the Rangers are reportedly very highly interested in this player. I know the Lightning are looking to try to rebuild what they used to have on that third line with Gord, Coleman, and Gaudreau. So he could be a player of interest to them, somebody who can play up and down your lineup, good defensively, kill penalties, etc. Likely going to command close to, I would think a first-round pick or a very highly touted prospect would be something that would likely be required to come back in a trade for Artturi Lehkonen. But another player getting a lot of attention there in Montreal for sure. I wouldn't completely rule out a guy like Brett Kulak too. I mean, Kulak's another guy who's getting some attention because of better play recently. Petrie's out there too, but I think that's more likely going to happen in the summertime. You never know, but it's just more complicated given his term and salary. Apparently the Habs are very interested in young prospect in Calgary's organization, Jacob Peltier. So if they want to hook up on a trade involving any of their guys, whether it be Lehkonen, Kulak, or any combination thereof, again, he's a player they probably would focus on. I know Jake Allen's making a return, as I mentioned yesterday. He'll be back tomorrow night for Montreal, and you have to wonder if they're getting him in just in time to play 1 or 2 games before the deadline. Maybe they're going to try showcasing him, given the fact that they've got Montembeault and they got Hammond in there, and we don't know the long-term prognosis for Price. Wouldn't be shocking if they traded Allen too, but we'll see. I don't know how much interest is going to be considering how long he's been out this season, but he's one of the few goalies that has a good amount of experience without having a crazy cap hit that might be attractive to some other teams looking for some insurance. The Winnipeg Jets have big decisions to make when it comes to Andrew Copp. The Jets sit just outside the playoffs, but are certainly within striking distance, especially with Vegas slumping hard the way they have been recently. But Copp is a pending UFA. It's quite possible he leaves in the offseason given the fact that they may have a tough time getting him signed because of cap constraints. So do they keep him as their own rental and try to go for it? Or do they make a trade and try to figure out a way to get better for now and later if they can? I mean, it's going to be tricky, though. He's been an important piece for them, somebody who's kind of gradually built up their stock within the organization as he's developed into a better and better player over the years. But that's going to be a big player to watch as well. Again, somebody who can be like your third-line player, kill penalties, good forechecker, pretty tenacious guy, can chip in offensively. Could be an interesting piece for a lot of teams out there as well. Apparently, Shea Weber, the contract in Montreal, is the most likely landing spot appears to be the Arizona Coyotes. The Coyotes, it sounds like they intend to try to make this acquisition from the Habs and use it to help get to the salary cap floor. We know that they're likely going to be, obviously cutting back a lot of what they can do. Try to get, to get to the floor. They're going to have a hard time as well, probably attracting players. The whole ASU thing. There was a big story in The Athletic from Katie Strang. Again, I know, summarizing a lot of what happened recently with the president and owner talking to the players and the PA rep Matthew Schneider that was there explaining their big grand plans. And they spoke to some of the players anonymously. And one of the current players said, the rest of the league is going to laugh at us when they get here to play at ASU. They're really concerned. I mean, from a logistics perspective and how this is going to come off. Ticket prices are expected to go up. It's just it's a complete mess there. So obviously they're going to need some help. So the Weber contract that the Habs have been rumored to possibly consider moving, it sounds like they're working on getting it to Arizona. They're the team that wants it. And it's just a matter of getting it there. The Canucks, we know they've been heavily rumored in a variety of things. We've heard about Miller. We've heard about Besser. We've heard Tyler Myers, his name is out there as well. Tanner Pearson, Jaro Halak to some extent. But based on Dave Pagnotta, he's saying he feels like Garland is the most likely player to get traded. It feels like, even though the old regime in there brought him in as via trade, signed him to a fairly decent midterm, long-term extension, that the new regime is probably more fond of moving him than anybody else. So we'll see. He's a player with term that have generated interest in a variety of teams. I know the Bruins were linked to him before. I think St. Louis, Minnesota, there's a few teams. Minnesota probably changed now, though, given the fact of where things are at with their cap situation. They already made some other deals, but still, there's a few teams that were linked to Garland either during the most recent trade talk here that has kind of been spawning in the last few weeks, or before when he was in Arizona. So we'll see. It's going to be an extremely busy next 5, 6, 7 days here as we get to the deadline and get all of these deals in place. I think it's going to be quite busy. Some GMs are a little pessimistic that it won't be as busy as we're hoping for, but only time will tell. There's lots of rumors, which gives us lots to talk about while we wait and see what happens. So let me know your thoughts on everything discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.